Welcome to Ask Me Anything, featuring spiritual medium and psychotherapist Kelly White.
Hi, everybody. My gosh, I feel like it's been forever. Today is, what is it today? It's June 3rd, 2021. Hi, Renee Martinez. How are you, honey? Gosh, I've been gone for a while. I got to take a week off, which was really nice. And right. So that's what I was doing. I'd love to know what everybody's been doing and what they're feeling about with this energy. It has been forever. Hi, Tracy. Hi, Sheila. How's everybody today? I hope you guys are doing well. This energy's been something, huh? Hey, Lori, how are you? Hi, everybody. This has been a great, interesting time that we're in right now with this new astrology that's going on for June, because it's really been it's a big situation we've got going on. So hi, Gloria. Oh, I'll make sure I say hi to Don. That's so sweet. Hey, Susan. Thank you. I love this color. I love blue. What can I say? I just love blue. Anyway, so I want to talk a little bit about the astrology of what's going on this month, and it's a big, busy month. Oh, hi, Gretchen. I feel refreshed. Thank you very much. It's been kicking your ass. Is that right? Tracy? Yeah, I bet. Hey, Kim Ann. Happy June. That's so sweet. And happy birthday to you, Kim. I know your birthday's coming up. So I am going to do the astrology update. Hey, Elizabeth Preston. Hey, Elizabeth. Hey, Cheryl. Yay, you made it to the live show. That's great. So, which is always fun. Hey, Cece, how are you? Well, I could just sit and wave hi to everybody all day. But anyway, let's talk about the astrology for June, because it is, hey, Wendy, I missed you too. Yeah, this energy is a metamorphosis energy. This is a big month. This June 2021 is a very big month. Let's start with what we have retrograde already, because I'm going to start with that. I'm going to hit some highlights, okay, of what's going on here. Hey, Lizette. Hey, Peggy. So first of all, as we remember, Pluto's already retrograde. That's retrograde, and that goes, I believe, until October. Saturn is retrograde also, and now Mercury is retrograde. And Mercury stays retrograde in its own house of Gemini, in its own planet of Gemini, for until June 22nd. And Mercury retrograde in Gemini makes it doubly intense. It makes it a lot more intense. And this could bring problems with communications. It could bring don't sign anything if you don't have to. If you don't have to, wait. I would say to make sure that you double check everything. For instance, back up your computer, okay? Because things like that will crash. This is a very powerful Mercury retrograde. Hey, Lori Counts. It's not always, Mercury retrograde is not always this intense, but this one is, okay? So just remember I'm saying that. And Mercury retrograde means to redo, reanalyze, review, reframe, and we're going to talk about that. Put a pin in that, as I always say, because we're going to be talking about reframing our lives, which is a perfect time to do that. So anyway, Mercury is retrograde until June 22nd. Soon, on June 20th, Jupiter is going to be retrograde. And this is a lot of power plants that are retrograde, planets, I should say, that are retrograde. And then Neptune at the end of the month is also going to retrograde. That's 5 planets in retrograde. It's a lot. So on the 5th, which is in 2 days, today's June 3rd, on June 5th, Mars opposes Pluto. And that is a highly spirited time. Okay, that brings out a lot of energy. That may bring you to some struggle with yourself or struggle with others. So you really want to watch on the 5th. That energy is pretty intense. Okay. But what I really want to hit now are 2 major events that are coming up. The first one is June 10th, and that is the solar eclipse. It's a new moon solar eclipse, and they call this the Ring of Fire. And at the same time, it conjuncts this Mercury retrograde, which means it's next to Mercury, which is retrograde, and it squares Neptune. So, what does this mean? It's going to be very intense. Eclipses bring changes. That's what they're designed to do. Okay, so I want everybody to set a clear intention. What do you want for a change in your life? Be very clear-headed about it. Do you want professional growth? Do you want to work on your relationship? Do you want to work on your relationship with yourself? This is the time to be really clear about it. Sheila, you're having surgery on Monday and you're scared shitless? No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. You want to set that intention, honey, that your surgery is going to be great. Okay? So just remember that. Just put that out there. Thoughts have energies. So anyway, also during this eclipse, you have to observe your self-talk. So if you say something negative, chances are that's going to reverberate out. So you want to be as positive with yourself. I am this, I am good, I am loved, I am this, I'm all of these things. You want to be as positive as possible. Okay. It's important with this eclipse. This is a big eclipse, major actually. Then on June 14th, the big astrology event of the year, actually, most astrologers call that on June 14th. And this is Saturn and Uranus squaring. So Saturn is the old way of doing things. Saturn is the old construction, the old ways, karma, actually. And Uranus is the new way. It's the new way. How we do things a new way now. And when they square, things are going to collide. It means collision. So I want everybody to look at their life as what was their life like? What were you guys doing in the year 1988? Let me backtrack. This energy began in 1988. Okay. So what happened in 1988? I can tell you, I went through my first divorce. So I was a big one. That was 1988. Actually, it was nothing compared to the rest of my life later on, but that was 1988. Then, if we look at the year 1999 and 2000, what happened to you in 1999 and 2000? In my case, I had a head injury, changed my life, and now I'm doing this show. So there you go. And then I want you to look at the years between 2008 and 2010. For me, I went back to grad school. So most of you will look at your lives and go, wow, I had a big ticket item happen during that period of time. And that's what this Saturn Uranus square brings. It brings big change, big change. So if you look at the fact that we had this big eclipse on the 10th, then we have this big square on June 14th with 4 planets retrograde plus a 5th one coming up. That's 5 planets retrograde. It's a lot of energy, that happens. So it's going to be a very big, powerful month, truly. And then on June 20th, we enter Cancer. The sun goes into Cancer, and that's the summer solstice too. And that's going to be a very powerful day because that's when Jupiter also goes retrograde. So you can see what I'm saying. It's like every couple of days, there's a big ticket item here. On June 22nd, Mercury goes direct, and it goes direct again in Gemini. And that's going to make things move quickly and clear things up fast for everybody. But then on June 25th, Neptune goes retrograde in Pisces. And that's often a great time to get for intuition. So a lot of you healers out there, a lot of you mediums out there, and psychics, your energy should be pretty. You'll be very in tune with what's going on. So really, in conclusion, pay attention to how you're reacting to everything. Okay. Um, wow. So Tracy said, well, let me see. Elizabeth says we can set intentions for more than one thing, right? Oh yeah, absolutely, honey. Set as many intentions. Write them on a piece of paper, light a candle. I mean, really put your energy into that, to making some clear-headed intentions of how you want to make a change. Sarah says, what do you think about shoulder replacement surgery during this time? Well, it's funny. I have people in my family that have just recently had that. Well, does it need to be done during this time? I mean, again, you're going back to do something, but if it's possible, I would probably wait until after about June 25th. That's what I would do. I get asked those kind of questions all the time, by the way. So that's what I would probably do, Sarah. Um, but and I want Tracy said my son was born in '88. There you go. '99, you lost your love to suicide. Sorry to hear that. In 2008, you were given an opportunity to develop your own department. So those are big ticket items. So let's going forward, we'll know that some major big things occur. You know. Um, so I think and Lisa said, my life was a mess in '88. My mom died in '99, and I lost my home in 2008. Then a severe depression in 2016. Not a great cycle. Well, you're right, Lisa. That is a terrible cycle. So going forward, it's going to be a much better cycle. Okay. It sounds like you've already gone through your stuff already, but this brings change. And so you want to put out there that you want the best change possible. Lizette says, what about flying at this time? Just put on a big thing of patience, Lizette. Okay. Because flying at this time, emotions are going to run high. Things are not going to be on time. That's Mercury retrograde, and it's all about communications. Just pack your patience. You know, what about getting the COVID vaccine during this time? I would get that anytime. I think it's a really good idea, Rebecca. Period. Um, but yeah, I think that part is probably fine. I do think that. John says waiting on a new house. I understand that, John. Waiting on a new house, finalizing a divorce. I'm sure I've been divorced during Mercury retrograde. um, So, yeah, I mean, finalizing, going back to finish something. This is what this period is about. Just put your patience on. That's all. I mean, it's not to have fear. Anne Margaret. Hi, Anne Margaret. I love that name. Um, COVID vaccine tip: drink a ton of water. I did it and I felt terrific. I've heard that too, Anne Margaret. It's a great idea. That's a great idea. So yeah, a lot of people are going to be experiencing a lot of change and growth, and because of that, we have the best guest on our show to discuss all of this. And I want to talk about my dear friend, who his name is Walter Goodwin. He's a Tibetan Buddhist and a Western mystic. And he's incredible. And he knows everything about all kinds of interesting questions about life. I can't wait. And he's got some great tips about reframing. And so let's bring him on. Walter, welcome. Hi there,
Hello,
dear
my friend.
friend. Hi, hi.
How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing really well. And I noticed we both got the memo
Look
for
at
the
this.
color.
Huh?
It's
It
perfect.
just happened. So we were tuned in.
Perfect. We were tuned
Good. That
in.
means good omen for the show. We're going to be
It's
on the
a
same
yeah.
wavelength.
Oh my gosh. So tell everybody your background that led you to becoming a Western mystic.
Well, first of all, I think we're all mystics. That's my basic premise. It's
Yeah.
just a question of how much we're engaged with it. Um, Many years ago, about 40 years ago, I met my first Buddhist teacher, and I studied with him for a lot of years. And he was really adamant about us remaining Westerners and not running off to ashrams or caves or monasteries. And so his contention was that we should stay involved in our lives and make our lives successful as Americans or Westerners, and that we should use that to build up our spiritual practice, which initially I thought was, I don't know, it wasn't what I wanted. Didn't want to be
Right.
a successful Westerner. I wanted to run away from all the people and the energy and trauma and everything. And but that's what I did. So I went into business because he basically forced me to, and I tried to turn that into spiritual practice. And he passed away. I don't know. I guess I was with him for maybe about 15 years before he passed away. And then I ran into a very interesting Tibetan guy, and I'm not sure I would have understood his approach or been drawn to Tibetan stuff necessarily without what I had done prior to that. And he was great, and he continued to impress upon me the need to stay involved in my businesses and to
Wow.
use that as part of spiritual practice. So I guess that's the best way to summarize my many years in practice, is that I've had to learn, or tried to learn,
Yeah.
To have it fold into my life, to have it dovetail with everything in my life. And as you know, Kelly, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, and we
Yeah.
have good days and bad days, but at least the foundation was, don't run from your life and run elsewhere for spiritual practice.
Well, so
Uh,
what I find so fascinating about that is that you were in business. I mean, you had a big business, and yet you still kept a spiritual practice. You can understand how corporate life is, you understand business, and yet you also know how to live with a spiritual practice.
Try to,
Mhm.
that's and I think, look, we're all, unless you hit the lotto or something, everybody's making a living and everybody's trying to take care of their own situation and business. And so we're kind of, most of us, in the same boat. And I do think that we need to be, all of us, conscious about the spiritual components of our lives and how that integrates with everything. And at the end of the day, I think it all is integrated and needs to be integrated. And so, it's very easy to compartmentalize, and I do, but it's also very good to remind yourself that, life and what comes up for you every day, at the end of the day, is your spiritual practice. That's what's
Right.
going to challenge you. That's where you're going to get your lessons. That's where you're going to learn and grow and evolve. And so you got to take it on that way. In my opinion, you have to look at the challenges, which we all have, with with careers, with finances,
Right.
with family, with friends. And those challenges are the things that mold us and turn us into better versions of ourselves, or
Right.
not. But it's
Right.
all an opportunity. Every problem is an opportunity. Every bad situation that you want to run away from grumbling is an opportunity to evolve yourself and to change your profile, your spiritual profile. And that's kind of
Right.
my take on things. My approach is to try to find an integrated approach to your life, but one which is very conscious, and one which you can
Mhm.
manipulate to your advantage, and work to your advantage. And at the end of the day, you could almost call anything spiritual practice if you bring the right motivation to it and the right intention to
Yeah.
it.
What I've always loved working with you is you have this ability to take a complicated subject and really make it so people can understand it, whether they have a left brain or a right brain or however they learn. And when it comes to Buddhism, or it comes to mysticism, let's talk about that for a bit. How would you even explain Buddhism to people that were new?
Well, I don't know how typical Buddhists would explain it, but I know how I would, after
Yeah.
about 40 years of playing around with it and trying to redefine it for myself. It's not hero worship or guru worship particularly.
Hmm.
It's really about kind of doing an analysis of the goods and the bads and the uglies and the pros and cons and the of your life across the board,
Wow.
and you know looking at your life from the perspective of consciousness. I guess that's a fair way
Yeah.
to label it. And so um, I often relate consciousness to emotions as a kind of a simpler way to look at it. If we don't know what to make of higher consciousness or lower
Mhm.
consciousness, and you have a pretty savvy audience, so you guys would all understand that. But we all understand being depressed, and we all
Yeah.
understand being elated, and we understand being happy and being sad. And so I guess what I would assert is that consciousness is like that. You sometimes feel that you're in a higher state of awareness or consciousness, and
Mhm.
sometimes you feel foggy and unclear, and that today you're off. So for me, Buddhism is an analysis of that, and it's a attempt to deconstruct it and unravel it and say, well, what things can I do which lift me up, and which
Okay.
things kind of come at me, whether I like it or not, that drag me down.
Hmm.
And how do I manage all that? because I guess the assertion in Buddhism 101 is that the Buddhists would say that every being, so certainly every human being comes with Buddha nature, is equipped with higher consciousness. It's like dirt on your windshield. The windshield is inherently clear, but the more junk you get and the more bugs as you drive through life, the more you can't see what you're doing. But that, the bugs in the dirt are not you. The consciousness is clear, the windshield is clear. So the question is simply, can you apply certain practices and principles to clear the gunk off and to lift yourself up out of a funk? And what are some of those practices, and what can you do to be more conscious or aware of where you're at and what's affecting you, and given what's affecting you, what you can do about it? And to me, that's all of Buddhism, is just, the Buddha said, don't listen to me if it doesn't resonate with you. Go do your thing. Like, go out there, test it all out, and ultimately you're going to be the one that determines your own fate and your own happiness, your own level of awareness. So
what you're saying is take responsibility.
Absolutely, take responsibility. And maybe some people are having a bad day and they don't want to take responsibility. And then there's other times when you think, okay, I will. And then you wake up the next morning and you go, but I don't know what to do. What does that mean, to take responsibility for my own consciousness and awareness? And that, I think, are the precepts of Buddhism and mysticism. I almost see those things as being synonymous. One just looks more Asian, and the other looks more, I don't know what, shamanistic or something. But the way I see it is it's all an approach to understand the energies of your life and understand the components of your life and how to address the positive and the negative components of your life and work with them to improve your condition. Like if somebody's unemployed and doesn't have the money for food or lodging, they know, I need to get employed, or I need to get access to money because I need food and I need a roof over my head. It's the same thing. Instead of saying I'm unemployed or I'm hungry, you say, well, I hurt. I'm having pain. So where does that pain come from? And what can you do to try to mitigate that, or to understand it better, to have more clarity? And to me, that is what mysticism and Buddhism is just understand your own human condition, whether it's overarching over the course of your whole life, or maybe multiple lives if you go that route, but also like on a day-to-day basis. Okay, I feel like crap today. What did Kelly say about the retrograde planets? And then you go, I think there's something to that. So I'm not going to sign this until the end of June, and I'm not going to do this, but I am going to go back and reflect on that. And then all of a sudden you're like, guess what? I'm taking control of my life better. And I'm processing the conditions of my life and the energies of my life. And if you work on something, it tends to get better than if you don't work on it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, to become aware of something. Jennifer says, taking responsibility is one thing, but how do you fight through to help the light bulb go off towards betterment? Great question.
Well, I think taking responsibility is the first step, and I think Jennifer's right. That's really only the first step. Yeah. But once you take responsibility, really, her question is a great one, and it's what I'm trying to convey, that there are ways to get the light bulb to go off. But let me just throw some examples out there. Maybe we all know what it feels like to be exhausted and drained. So what are the odds of a light bulb going off when you're exhausted and drained? Slim. So what you got to do is you got to say, well, you got to be honest with yourself and say, I'm exhausted and I'm drained, and I need to do something about that.
So first you would do a self-check, basically.
That's it. You start with this, with the self check, and try to be honest with yourself and not judgmental, because we all have our off days or off incarnations. But you look at yourself and say, okay, I just feel like I'm not on top of my game. And don't beat yourself up over it, but just be honest about it. And then say, well, what can I do to stop what might be draining me, whatever that is?
Okay.
And what could I do to counter that with what might empower me? And I have a handful of things that I would recommend, but I also think that everybody needs to also get to know themselves well enough to say, I just need to go to the ocean, and that rejuvenates me. Well, that might work for you, and you might live near the ocean. I don't, and that doesn't quite work for me. But so I have to go, well, I'm in Colorado, so maybe a walk in the pine trees will shift me and wash some bad energies out of me, and then empower me. And then if you do enough of those things and you really kind of tend to yourself and take care of yourself, the odds of the light bulb going off increases dramatically. To me, it's all that process of a constant, not tedious, but a constant assessment of, where am I at? Where am I at today? You wake up in the morning, go, I feel like crap. Like, so what am I going to do about it? Is this today? Do I just double the coffee, or do I push that meeting off for an hour and sit and meditate for a few minutes? Or it's a beautiful day outside, do I just stick my face in the sun and take a couple of deep breaths of fresh air? And then you individually are responsible for your own shifts and
Right.
for making your to-do list and to not do list, and God no lists, and like never again lists, and need to do this as quickly as yesterday lists.
Oh,
And
I
you just
understand.
start building your lists.
You
And
get, absolutely. Liz
and
Beck has a question here. She says, but we all have bills to pay. And if your day job is just exhausting and draining, and you are working towards getting out of it, but it's still a ways off, how can you better handle the day to day, the struggle of that toxic atmosphere?
well, trust me, I understand this. When I
I
was
was going
a
to say more than
CEO
anybody.
of a decent sized company for many years, and it was pretty toxic. Most of my customers were Wall Street firms, and they weren't easy on the Constitution. I understand about being toxic, and trying to purge that all out. I think, I don't know if this is going to be a good answer or not, but all I found is that you got to just deal. We all know that. So the question is, can you carve out more time for yourself? And can you take a walk that you normally wouldn't? Can you do a meditation that you normally wouldn't? Can you take 2 minutes longer on your shower and let the water wash over you, but with full intentionality of washing the toxins from your physical body and your subtle body, your energy body? And I guess what I found is, the more intentionality you can bring to anything, the and with a focus of removing toxins and purging and clearing yourself, purifying yourself, the more you can bring your mind to it, the more effective it is. So it's one thing to just walk down the street,
Right.
but if you can consciously, just walk and take 30 seconds and hug a tree or whatever works for you, and just take your shoes off and put your feet on Mother Earth, and just let the things wash out of you. Earth is a great healer, and and the sun, and I'm a big fan of sun and blue skies here in Colorado, and so nature is very important. Just carving time out for yourself is important. The toxicity won't go away, the environment won't go away, but you have to take a little time. Sorry, but I know we're busy, but you have to take the time to consciously mitigate that. But you can do smarter things, like I often think about trees, which I never used to think about. But it occurred to me a while back that, when we exhale carbon, what is it? Carbon dioxide, right?
Mhm.
We exhale CO2. That is toxic to us. We exhale that. But that is what the trees and plants need to survive. And what do they exhale that's toxic to them? Oxygen. So you can go for a walk in the woods and you can have this wonderful symbiotic relationship with the trees and the plants. And you could say, I'm giving you what you need to survive and to live, and you're giving me what I need to survive and live. And or you could just do a dumb walk for 5 minutes and not think about anything. And guess what effect it will have? Poquito.
Yeah.
But if you do if you do that with some consciousness, which is also hard when you're exhausted and you got all these toxins in your system, but I think do your best, meditate to calm your mind, try to carve space out for yourself, use water. Water is fabulous. Use cardio. Cardio kind of helps burn off crap toxins, and use nature to whatever degree you can. Some people love the rain, go for a walk in the rain. The rain drives me nuts, so that doesn't work for me. But I'll go walk and let the sunshine bathe me, and that works.
So what you're saying is to reframe this.
I think that's a good word. And that's particularly a good word when you're talking about Mercury retrograde. And what
Yes.
I'm not an astrologer like you are, but what I understand about retrogrades is anything RE is something you
Yes.
should consider doing retrogrades, right? So
Yes.
I think that that's a key word, that you could go for a walk and have whatever experience, or you could take a shower and have whatever experience, or you could reframe those experiences and say, this is going to be part of my practice.
Yeah.
This,
Yes.
this walk or this shower, I'm going to take a shower before work, but this shower is going to be, I'm going to reframe my shower into being part of washing toxins. And I'm going to consciously think about it as the water blasts me on the top of the head and takes more of my hair away. I think, I just let it pour over me and it just washes everything. And I come out of that thing feeling like I had a nice meditation when it was the morning shower that I was going to get stuck doing anyway. But it's all here. It's all
Yes.
the intent that you bring to it, which is another big thing about Buddhism, which they don't know how to explain it very well, in my humble opinion. But it really is about putting your mind and your consciousness and reframing that and putting it in the right place so that you can take ordinary experiences and you can empower those experiences. They can be very different experiences than they normally are. And that's what you're bringing to the equation. Even though you're tired, even though you're exhausted, even though you feel you're toxic beyond, those are the most important times for you to pound your fist on the table and say, fuck it. Tomorrow I'm going to take a spiritual shower or whatever you want to call it, and tonight after work, when I go to the mailbox and back, which is my 30-second walk either way, this time I'm going to be conscious, and I'm going to, this is part of my empowerment of myself. I'm moving away from using the word spiritual as much as I moved away from religious many years ago. I don't even know if I want to think about things in terms of spiritual or not, because it's all spiritual, it's all life, it's all about consciousness, and we're either more conscious on a day-to-day basis and more empowered, or less.
And if we're more consciousness, if we have more consciousness, are we more energized?
Yeah, because it's all about energy. I mean,
let's talk about energy. Yeah.
Let's do that. It's kind of an oversimplification maybe, but I think it's also accurate. I mean, any physicist will tell you that they might say matter doesn't exist. Like here's my watch that's sitting here. This is matter. If it would hurt if I did that. It's hard. But a physicist will tell you matter is just another form of energy. It's just energy that's been slowed, if you will, to a different level. So everything is energy. That means your energy. My desk is energy. My watch is energy. I'm energy.
Right.
I'm energy. Now, I have a body, and it has matter and mass, and it has cells, and it has a lot of other things. And somewhere in there, I have a consciousness and thoughts. But it's just like the difference between my body and my thoughts is really just the difference between the energy in this matter versus the sun that's outside, which is waves of light and photons and things. So the way I tend to look at things is, if you can accept the premise that everything is energy, and you can accept it from a spiritual perspective or a otherwise metaphysical perspective, or you could accept it from the perspective of physics and ask any physicist, is this all energy? And they'll say in some fashion or other, yes. So that's the basic premise, which for me is not that hard to accept, but might be for others. But if you can accept that it's all energy, then what are the grand implications of that? That means that my body is energy. That means my mind is energy. My consciousness is energy. That means my relationship with you is an energetic one. That means my relationship with my toxic work environment is an energetic relationship that I need to figure out and address. Everything. My career is about energy. My relationships are about energy. My family is about energy. My love life is about energy. My everything is energy. My thoughts are about energy, and energy affects energy. I mean, and there's a million good and bad examples of that. You can, I don't know, x-rays are good until you get too many of them, right? And but it's all energy. And so, what can you...
Jennifer asks, energy with a soul, tangible versus non-tangible.
Yeah, now we get into interesting distinctions, but I don't know. On the most esoteric level, so you guys have really hard questions. I'm not going to come back, Kelly. This is
you got to come back
for me.
Change your consciousness.
From the exactly, that's what I need to do. From a very esoteric Buddhist perspective and some other spiritual traditions, and I don't know about the physicists, but they say there's conventional reality, which is the one we perceive and exist in, and then there's ultimate reality. And in ultimate reality, the rules of the game are different. And that is much more esoteric. And somewhere in between those two, I believe, is, our soul. I think most of us would argue that a soul kind of exists as a separate thing from our body. But depending on what level you're looking at, you might argue at the highest, most ultimate reality, our soul doesn't exist, because we're really just part of God. And
you're absolutely right.
so it's the classic, like, Hindu example is waves on the ocean. Is there are waves, they exist, but then when the wave peaks or recedes, where'd the wave go? It's just the ocean again. So does the wave have its own soul for that period of time, or is there a soul that goes from wave to wave? Yeah, maybe. I believe that I have a soul, or I am a soul, and that soul reincarnates, and I've had those kind of experiences or awarenesses. But if you want to get really fancy about it, ultimately there's just unity. There's
that's correct.
Singularity.
Yes.
Ultimately, there's no difference. There's no duality. There's no division. But
in this dimension, we have that.
In this
dimension, earth plane, we have that.
And it doesn't do you much good to say there's only unity when you're at a toxic work environment and you're trying to figure out what to do with that. So
my gosh.
Depending on what you're looking at and how you're dealing with it, I guess I would say there's different answers. Depending. And so it's part of your job to say to yourself, okay, am I dealing with a toxic work environment, or am I trying to release and dissolve into unity? Those are different, but they're both equally important and equally viable, and they both kind of complement each other. Like if you if you don't do your spiritual practice, I think you'll be depleted of energy and your life will get worse. If all you do is sit around like, this for,
Right.
weeks and weeks, you'll starve. And before that, you'll lose your job. So,
Right.
you got to kind of find this balance between ultimate reality
Right.
and God consciousness or something, and making it through the day and saying, yesterday I felt really toxic and I want to feel less toxic today. What is there anything I can do?
Right. Well,
And I assert that there are many things you can do.
well, and Margaret asked a question. Can you share easily the tips to change negative thoughts to positive thoughts when you don't feel positive in that given moment? Great question, and Margaret.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm having to reframe my these are putting on my buttons. Okay, this is what I would say. Look, sometimes things are just hard, and sometimes things are
Yes.
negative, and people
Yeah.
can be negative, and people can be toxic. And you know, um, my dear departed father would say, sometimes you just need to blind people with ass. Just show them your backside and head out the door. And but sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you have to deal, and you can't walk away, and you're dealing with a negative, toxic situation. So it's hard to do this real time, but I think that this is viable. And this is part of what of reframing kind of your history and past, but we've moved forward into a very tangible present moment. And what I would say is, if you can do it, or even after the fact, if you can reflect back on it, when you're in a negative situation with negative people or whatever, afterwards, or to the degree you say to yourself, can I be compassionate in this moment? Can I be kind in this moment? Can I be strong in this moment? Can I set my boundaries in this moment?
Mm,
All of those are positive things. You're not saying,
yeah.
this person's an asshole and I wish they would quit bugging the shit out of me,
Well,
which
that's
is,
usually what people go to, though. Yeah. Yeah.
don't tell my wife, but yeah. But yeah, that's where we all go. But
Mhm.
that's the reframing. Like, if you can
Yes.
catch yourself and you say, so look, when positive things happen, or I don't know, let's say some really great things happen to a person, we all know that some people react to that very egotistically, like, okay, I'm better than you now because I got a new car and you have an old car. We don't like those kind of people that react poorly to positive things. And we all know how we think we know how to behave
Mm,
somewhat well with reacting to positive things. But when negative things happen, we understandably we try to cut ourselves a little slack, and we try to
yeah.
say, well, yeah, they deserved it, and I'm tired of that shit and whatever. And everyone goes, yeah, I would have been worse than you. I would have, what I would have done, I would have said.
Right.
But if you can say to yourself, what am I learning from this person? What am I learning from
Yeah.
this experience? And at the end of the day, could I come out of this negative situation feeling better about myself for having bit my tongue, for taken a deep breath and responded in a way that was helpful and beneficial, or turned the energy some, as opposed to
Yeah.
just which
Yes.
is what we're all guilty of doing most of the time. So I guess I would say, and it sounds maybe a little bit too boulder woo woo, but in a negative situation, if the best is to do it real time. If you can't, reflect back on it afterwards, but kind of say, was that an opportunity for growth for me? Was that an opportunity for me to reshift things?
Yes.
That person does that same thing all the time, and if you can say that, well, you're in a good situation, because now you got somebody that just repeats their same toxic maneuvers all the time, and you can take a little bit of time on your own, meditate on it, and kind of go, well, what would be a clever way to respond instead of the not so clever way I always
Right.
seem to respond? And just try some stuff out. You've already tried stuff that isn't working very well. That's what we
Right.
typically do. Try something new. And then probably the worst thing that could happen is they look at you like, well, isn't this the point where you're supposed to scream at me and storm off and be pouty? And now instead you're like, whatever, and it shifts everything. So, but it's back to what I was saying about energy. Just think about it in the simplest terms, and I do because I'm a simple guy. But if I can just kind of go, all right, was this good energy or bad? Was my reaction good or bad? What might be better? Can I infuse some positive energy into this, or can I embrace or hold some positive energy? And I guarantee you, over time, things are different. I mean, we all have a million experiences where somebody's like nasty to you and you're nasty back. Well, we know the trajectory of that, but every
Exactly.
once in a while we get lucky or whatever, and someone is nasty to us and we go, look, you're having a bad day. And guess what? The trajectory, we've all experienced that. So all I'm
Yes.
saying is just do that more.
Right.
Manage your energy more consciously, more often, because
Right.
none of us never manage our energy, and none of us are always unconscious. We're
Yeah.
just conscious some small percentage of the time. So then I would say, oh, guess what? You're busted. You're conscious. Don't lie to me. Don't lie to yourself. You're
Right.
conscious X% of the time. Double it in the next month or the next year or whatever.
Wow.
React positively. Put yourself on a little bit of a trajectory of catching yourself. And when you
Yeah.
don't, think about it afterwards and go, well, shit, I'm gonna, tomorrow's another day. I'm gonna
Oh
get
my
up and try
gosh.
and be more conscious.
Well, Kim Ann, hi Kim Ann. She says, I think an important thing to change your current reality is to concentrate on what you want, not what you are dealing with. Energy to the positive, not the negative, and watch your words and thoughts.
Yeah, 100% agree. What was the first thing she said? Concentrate on what you want, not what you're dealing with. That's true. And that goes back to some of my Buddhist silliness, which is if you set your intent
Hmm.
and you set your goal and you hold that in as best you can in mind, then all this other gunk comes in the middle. But when you're tempted to and go after all the things coming at you, you can kind of go, wait a minute, what was my original intent? What was my original goal? And if you can get yourself to go back to focusing on something that you set out to begin with, then at least you have, it's like I don't know, it's like a flagpole in golf or something. They don't just swing randomly. They're looking like, oh, there's the hole and there's the flagpole. So maybe I should aim for that. And then sometimes it goes this way and sometimes this way, and then they go, oh shit, now I got to go deal with a sand trap. But they still are looking at that flagpole and saying,
Right.
that's ultimately where I want to go as quickly as possible with as few strokes as possible. Life is like golf. Any golfer would tell you that, and I'm not a
That's,
golfer, so
that's very true. Tammy Hendricks has a great question here. She says, how can you see the person accurately in the moment? Connecting to their essence isn't connecting to your own essence when you're observing theirs, animals or humans.
well, I mean, that's a really good question. And I think that it's really hard to be completely objective and
Yeah.
not be somewhat subjective because we're all assessing and analyzing from our own experience and our
Right.
own perceptions. But
Very true.
and so sometimes you may get it and right, and sometimes you may be wrong, and that's just learning. I mean, that's
Yeah.
spiritual growth. And so I would say, do your best to manage your emotions in any interaction and not knee jerk react to anything, and try to monitor your emotions and your thoughts. And if you're getting worked up, if you can't walk away, at least recognize it. And if you're having frustrated thoughts, at least recognize them. And you may tell yourself, it's okay, I'm allowed to be frustrated because look what they did. But over time you might get better at saying, well, I'm not at my best when I'm frustrated, so even though this is totally warranted, if I'm allowing myself to be frustrated, then that's really, like Tammy's suggesting, that's very subjective. The more upset I am, the more frustrated I am, the more I'm imposing myself onto this energetic transaction.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
if I can hold back on my frustrations, my anger, my reasonable, rational, frustrated response, then I think you're in a much better position to say, all right, okay, I'm getting frustrated, but I'll just pick that up later in like a half hour. I'll go back to being frustrated. No worries. Push it over here and then go, okay, where are they coming from? And that is not being tarnished by my frustration. And then you become a better seer. I mean, wouldn't
Yeah.
we all agree? In that moment, you're managing you're putting less of your subjective experience into the equation.
Mhm.
You're pushing your subjective experience a little bit aside, and you're just saying, okay, where are they coming from? And you might change your mind
That's
during the
actually a
conversation.
good tip. That's a really good tip to actually do that in that exact moment. I used to say, count to 10, but really what you're saying is kind of hold back for a moment and say, where are they coming from before you put out energy that could be really negative.
Well, her question, was a good setup that,
Yeah.
it's like, because we are all interjecting our own subjective experience, right? And we're so, to whatever degree you can kind of say, I'll think about this later.
Right.
I'll impose my own judgment on this later. So you can buy yourself a little bit of time and just say, okay, that's
Yes.
later on. For now, so what do you have to say? What are you doing? And you might start off thinking, what an asshole, and end up saying, okay, now I see your point. You might start off thinking, well, no, they're being very reasonable. And then you realize, no, they're being an asshole. It could
Yeah.
go either way, but at least you're being more objective about it, right?
It's tough being a human, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, but that it is. But apparently, that's what we come
I
here
signed
for.
up for.
And we signed up for this so that we could learn all these lessons. So
Yeah.
just learn them.
So just learn them.
Just engage, and make
Yeah.
mistakes, get back up on the bike, that's
Yeah.
think about it afterwards. I think the biggest problem is that we judge ourselves for having made a mistake or not knowing
Oh,
something.
yeah.
We need to go back later and say, I don't know. If I can come out of this having learned something or able to do it better next time, then that's the whole point. That's
Yeah.
the whole point of incarnation. So
Yes.
just
Yes.
go back and try it again.
My
Good.
God.
Right,
So
right,
let me
right.
ask you about Iron Bird Dharma. So tell us about that because it's your website and people that are interested in reaching out to Walter, he's got a wealth of information on his website. How did you come up with Iron Bird Dharma?
Well, um, like I said, I spent a lot of years studying Buddhism, and I kind of felt like I met a lot of very brilliant scholars and fascinating translators,
Yeah.
and thank God for all of them. But I thought, and paraphrasing my own many year experience, it I don't know how approachable some of this is.
Mm.
It sounds too spiritual, or it sounds too guru worship, or it sounds whatever. And I was like, but no, I think there's gems here.
Yeah.
So so I made some leaps of faith, I guess, where I said, you know what I want to do? I want to try and figure out how to take things that people have said a certain way and get to the crux of it, or find
Mm.
the diamond in the rough, or the find the gem that's buried, or the pearl in the oyster, and just dig around and go, ha ha, here's a little pearl, and I'm going to say it kind of this way, which makes more sense to me. And if it makes more sense to me, maybe it'll make some sense to people like me. And there's a lot of people not like me that it won't make sense to, but I can only explain it my way. So that's kind of it. I just decided I want to reframe back to our
Yeah.
retrograde planet theme. I want to reframe um, things that aren't new ideas. I mean,
Mhm.
whether it was Christ or Buddha, or Hindu masters, or Japanese Zen guys, or whatever, or mystics and shamans, I don't think the universe has changed that much.
Right.
I think that the
Right.
guys who were super, super aware and conscious, they spoke to in their own languages, in their own cultures, to their own audiences. And they did their best to try to convey something very tricky, very, very personal. And people have done a really magnificent job of trying to translate those things, but translating words isn't
Yeah.
always enough, because now you're translating something that the way someone 2,000 years ago used to think, it's not necessarily how we think in a high technology, fast-paced, very
Yeah.
toxic world, and I had very diverse teachers and exposure, and so I got really frustrated, and I talked with you a lot, and I said, Kelly, there's all this stuff is I think it's all connected, but I don't know how. But I think it should be. It should be able to be explained in a way where everything kind of fits like puzzle pieces fitting together. And then there was this one, again, you've said I'm Tibetan Buddhist of some flavor or sort. And there was this guy that brought Buddhism from India to Tibet. The Tibetans call him Guru Rinpoche, and otherwise he's known as Padmasambhava. And he did some prophecies when he was around, which I think was about the year 800. And he said, the Dharma, the sacred teachings, is going to go from the east to the west. And he said it's going to happen when people's lifespans get to about 100 years, and when the horses run on wheels, and when the iron bird flies. So
Wow.
I figure this is the time.
This is the
This
time.
is the time
Yeah.
where the teachings are coming from Tibet and elsewhere, and there's interest in shamanism and quantum physics. And for me, I feel like it's all the same. It's all kind of converging, and I have an affinity for the Tibetan stuff. So I like said, hey, it's the time of the iron bird, and Dharma is just another word for truth or teachings or something like that. So I was like, hey, Iron Bird Dharma, put a stake in the ground. It's time. Padmasambhava said at some point in the future it's coming to the West. Let's take this on as Westerners. Let's do this in our language, in our culture, with our frame of mind, and try to
Yes.
make it embraceable for us. So that's Iron Bird Dharma, and people can go there and they can poke around and clicky like people do. And
Well, you have you offer such pearls of wisdom. Everybody is talking about how fascinated that you are, and everybody is really loving you and really thanking you for all this information, because really what you do, Walter, with this is you help people that are stuck. You help move them along, because people get stuck through a negative experience or through the way they just continue to make the same choices. But what you're suggesting to people is that there are other ways to operate.
Yeah, and if you go to my website, I mean, first of all, if anyone wants to contact me for any reason, you can do that on the contact page. I'm not doing very many formal things these days, some one-on-one stuff with people, but I'm gonna try and be brave and expand, and so that will happen at some point. But you're welcome to send an email to the account there on the contact page. But also, I just added this thing called the Iron Bird Protocol, which has a few different sections. And if this resonates with anybody at all, just go to that one page and click on the different sections and look at some of the bullet points and read a little bit. Because what I'm really trying to do is to figure out ways to pull together different tips and practices that that will help us deal with the toxicity, help us empower ourselves, help us not be as drained, help us improve our meditation skills, which conversely allow us to focus and allow us to let go of focus. So all of that to me comes together in kind of an approach, which I'm calling the Iron Bird Protocol, and which I'm trying to pull more content together for. And I laid it out as simply as I could and as best I could, and it would do a much better job in, take 10 minutes and read it, and you'd understand things better than I could explain it to you extemporaneously here too. So it's
Wow.
there for whoever thinks I might.
Oh, you guys are going to love it. Iron Bird Dharma, you're going to love it.com. And it's in the comments section. You guys are going to love it. It's a fabulous site. And I'm hoping that you'll be back, Walter, with more tips, more conversation about moving people on that are stuck.
Well, I think this is it. It's about being unstuck and how to reframe your life and for me, it's your self perspective and the things in your immediate circle that hold you back from unsticking yourself. So there's more things to say about that, which I put on the website some. But if you do invite me back at some point, I think the complement to everything that we kind of discussed tonight, for me anyway, is various meditation practices which facilitate letting go. Tonight we talked a lot about focusing and reframing and rethinking your perspectives and reassessing and very consciously reworking your psyche, your thoughts, your personality. So there's a very structured, conscious, active component, and then there's this equally important, very important meditative component where you have to get better at letting go of all the crap and just releasing into the energy field that's there. I know we're running out of time, but I'll say one quick thing for 20 seconds. I was talking with a friend the other day, and I said, it occurred to me, if we're all sitting right now, and let's say we had I don't have anything like it here. I'll use my phone as a prop. Let's pretend this is a little radio. Now, you could turn the radio on and you could go to your favorite station of choice. Or then you could turn the dial and you could go to my favorite station of choice. But those radio waves, they're surrounding us all the time, right? Yeah. It's a question of focus. Where do you want, what station do you want to listen to? So cosmic consciousness, higher planes of awareness, heaven, right here.
Yes.
It's just the frequency.
Wow. Yeah.
Just like a radio. It's just the frequency. So we have to learn how to tune ourselves to the frequencies we prefer and to which are happier and higher and lighter and brighter and empowering. And just as easily as you can go from one radio station to the next, you can go from one state of mind to the next state of mind by just learning the little tips and techniques to change your dial and to focus on a different frequency. And it's all about energy. It's all about vibration. It's all about frequency. And it's all about how you can change your frequency. And everyone's got that ability in them. Everybody, period.
Wow. Thank you for that. That's amazing. So you'll be back and we'll talk about meditation. And focus. I mean, on that. I think this is great. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And thank you, Walter, you're as a wonderful guest. And we'll see you very soon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
You've been listening to Ask Me Anything, featuring spiritual medium and psychotherapist Kelly White.